Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, December 9th. Great to have you with us this week. The city of Akron and the state of Ohio continuing to do battle over the city's finances and a recent audit. We'll talk about it. Another state taking aim at Ohio for the Craigslist killer being let out of jail not once but twice. And who's in and who's out in the 2012 local elections. Those stories and more next on NewsNite. Great to have you with us this week and a lot of discussion ahead. Let's meet our panel. Phil Trexler joins us this week from the Akron Beacon Journal. Great to have Stephanie Warsmith with us this week, also from the Akron Beacon Journal. And always great to see Larry States here this week from WAKR. And Stephanie, we begin with this audit, and you know, we all look at our own finances and we can't go into the negative. The city of Akron, with all of these funds, they say they're making progress. The state says not so fast.
Right. What happened yesterday is Dave Yost's office replied to the city's response.
The state auditor.
Yes, the state auditor replied to the city's response to his audit of them that came out a couple of months ago. And basically, well, he said that the plan was disappointing in its cursory treatment of these important matters. And so he wants them to come up with a new plan. He's giving them a month to do this. If the next plan isn't satisfactory, then he says that the city will go down into fiscal watch, which is a step above the fiscal caution category, a new category he created. The city was the first to go into that, and that brings with it, state oversight of your finances.
Is he asking more for clerical changes, or is he asking for prove to me where the money is?
Well, what he is mainly concerned about is the city at the end of the year having negative fund balances. The city basically has said all along that they have the money in other accounts, but he wants them to get rid of particular funds having negative balances. And so the city in its plan said, we will do this, we will take care of these negative fund balances over 4 years. He is saying now in his response that's not good enough. I want it to be gone by 2013. And then he also is going to start requiring them to do a quarterly reporting with his office to explain how they are responding to the concerns that he's raised.
I have a question. That is, apparently he's concerned about the amount of debt that the city of Akron is under right now and whether the city can actually come up with the money by 2013. That's the question. Can they come up with what they need by 2013 to end those negative fund balances? Now, I also wonder if this isn't really be turning into a political football game here between Mr. Yost, who's a Republican, and the administration led by a Democrat. I'm sort of wondering, why have other cities been put under this type of restriction before? I mean, 1 year when they say we need 4 years to do it. How bad is the fund imbalance? I think those are the questions that need to be asked.
Interesting, too, that this comes in the same week that the city was named one of the top cities in terms of job creation. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been the mantra of the political administration to spend money to make money. And that's what they've done far more than any other city in the state. And this might be the result of that. Certainly, they have invested a lot, and they've spent a lot, and they've taken on some debt in order to develop.
Well, the mayor is more of a risk taker when it comes to that. He always has been. I mean, he's always spent money hoping to get a return on money. This day and age, it's probably a bit riskier because of the way the economy's been, and Akron's probably got some debt out there that they thought would be repaid earlier, or investments that would have paid off that haven't paid off yet. And that's probably what Dave Yost is looking at, saying, well, we can't wait for you. You shouldn't wait 4 years to get this paid off. You have to give it paid off in a year. Yeah. I don't know if that's possible or not, and I'm sure the city will let him know whether that's really possible at all or feasible.
And the recession didn't help Akron at all. And this is coming to fruition now. The timing was poor for them. But,
and Stephanie, you write about the city selling some bonds. Is that to cover some of these deficits? What is that?
Right. The city's practice has been to, go out and do a project and then sell bonds and notes to repay that money that was spent on the project. Now, they have said, as part of the plan that the initial plan that they gave to Dave Yost's office, that they're no longer going to do that. From now on, when they have a project they want to do, they're going to sell the bonds and notes up front so that they aren't paying themselves back essentially later. So they're going to change their practice there. But that's definitely one of the concerns that he's raised. The other thing that they were doing is every time they had a capital project, they would start a new fund for that. And the city had been doing this since 1981. They said that they felt like it made it clear where the money was and easier for accountability purposes. But Dave Yost, said you can't have this many funds, and that's one of the steps the city says that they've taken. They've gone from 740 down to 140 funds.
See, people hear 740 different accounts, and their eyes roll because that just sounds an exorbitant amount.
Well, the thing is, I think the reason they did that is because they wanted to keep closer track of each expenditure. Which, if you have if you lump one fund in with another and you sort of mix the money, if you will, maybe the bookkeeping's a little more difficult to do, or keeping track of that money for that project. I think I can understand why the city did that. But 740 might be a bit extreme, but at the same time, I think that was their way of trying to keep track of each project to make sure that there wasn't money being borrowed from another project, or money that was crossing lines that would become confusing later on, where there might be an imbalance somewhere else, a surplus somewhere else, which they also had that problem. Akron did. They had surpluses in some accounts and they had negative balances in other accounts. And the city initially told Dave Yost that they could transfer some of that money if they had to, from one account to another. I guess robbing Peter to pay Paul, I guess, is the one thing you...
Well, we'll go from tracking money and see what the city responds to in a month to tracking inmates in the state of Texas, taking aim specifically at Summit County for Richard Beasley being released from jail not once, but twice when they say they wanted him held up here. Phil, where is the disconnect here? Because it sounds like Summit County is saying, we just did what we were supposed to do.
Well, there's a huge disconnect here, and it's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going on. The background is that... Beasley, the prime suspect in these three killings and shootings on the Craigslist case, he was let out of jail twice last summer.
Here in Summit County.
Here in Summit County. There was a warrant, a parole violation detainer set in place by Texas because of a past conviction he had. The question obviously arises is how he was able to come out of jail. Locally, the folks are saying you can't hold him indefinitely. Texas is saying yes, you can. Every prosecutor that I talk to, every defense lawyer that I talk to, all say you can't do it. There is a state inquiry going on by this quasi-governmental unit that oversees parole transfers from state to state. They're going to take a review of it. I think it's going to come down to is there was just strictly a miscommunication. There is no fast and steady law that says you must hold them indefinitely, and it's a question everybody wants to ask because the three people are dead, and we're all
Texas Rangers on their way here to get him or anything like
that. I just find it hard to believe that Texas would come and get him. And basically, the executive director of this group, I talked to him yesterday, and he said that no, they weren't going to come and get him. Why would they? That doesn't make any sense. But they would want him to be held until the resolution of the case in Summit County. And Summit County's position was, well, we can't hold him, and Texas only wants him if he's convicted. So there's just this big gray area, a lot of finger pointing coming out of Texas to here, and then back down to Texas. And then I think in the end, this inquiry that they're going to do is just going to be a wash of, there is no fast law that
he was wanted for parole violations in Texas, from what we understand. Well, he was already being held, up here. He was going to be tried up here. But this new case coming up, was Texas afraid that, with him facing 3 murder charges, he was going to be released? I don't think so. I think he was going to stay in jail for a while up here. I don't know what their concern or fear was that, they said he was released, but, he's back in custody now, or he's, within police custody. So I don't understand. Are they trying to say, well, if you hadn't released him in the summer, this wouldn't have happened? I think that's what the Texas officials are trying to say.
Are they worried about civil lawsuits?
Well, I don't know if it's civil lawsuits. I don't think you can sue, a judge. It was a judge's order. A retired judge made the decision. It's basically saying that Texas has said we're not going to come get him unless he's convicted, and the parole violation warrant was for his arrest up here.
Yeah, the other key decision or key announcement in the case this week is that he will be facing the death penalty likely, and that will be held here in Summit County. Even though the majority of the bodies have been found in Noble County. What do you guys make of that?
I think it's a good decision. Noble County is not a wealthy area. Walsh's office has done multiple death penalty cases. Her argument is, Sherry Bevan Walsh's argument is that the cases originated here in Summit County. The plans allegedly were put into place here. There was a little bit of disconnect here. At first, when I talked to the office, they said, yeah, we're going to try both Beasley and the 16-year-old Stowe kid. And then I called down Noble County, and he said, I had no intention of doing that. So there's a little bit of disconnect there. the prosecutor's office will tell you that there's no turf war going on here, but that's not what I hear in the background. It's all over the board.
There have been some people who have raised concerns about the fact that Summit County will end up having to pay for the case, but it does seem logical that you have a county that likely has very little experience with death penalty cases versus Summit County in an urban area that has experience with that, and so you want to get a conviction.
Are politics at play? Sherry Bevan Walsh is up for re-election.
I don't think so. I mean, she draws well enough. She doesn't need this case, I don't think, to get elected.
Also, Noble County, one judge handles juvenile court, common pleas court, probate court. It's one judge. I mean, how are you going to, how's he going to juggle this, especially if he has other cases he has to deal with? They don't have the number of prosecutors in Noble County that Summit County has. And as they both mentioned, they're more familiar with death penalty cases because they've tried, several of them. Sherry Bevan Welch has on her tenure. So, it's a matter now with the juvenile, that's interesting because if he is bound over to be tried as an adult, is he tried in Noble County or Summit County? Now, that's another issue that's going to come up.
Okay, we'll talk about that. I want to go a little deeper in the case as we move the conversation now to newsnight.net.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
Filing deadline this week for candidates who want to be on the ballot in 2012, and a few names we thought were going to be there, thought for sure were going to be there, are not there. Let's begin with Gary Moneypenny, who we talked about ad nauseum the last couple of weeks, running for sheriff. Now says he doesn't want the job. I am blown away by that decision based on what we thought was going to happen.
Yeah, I think everybody was. I mean, I think we all viewed him as the front runner, if not for anything, is that he has the most name recognition. Right. So it was certainly a huge surprise, and we'd love to be behind the closed doors to find out the real reason for this. There's got to be more to the story, and we've all heard rumblings that there was going to be a nasty campaign, that the Republicans were really ticked off at the way that Drew is announced he's not running and not, stepping down and whatnot.
Well, Drew is very upset, too. In a conversation with us, he sort of vented on one of our shows about the fact that he was told, basically, that they wanted somebody else for the post and that he should step down.
Right.
And he said they didn't even consult with me on the person that they chose.
The
Republican Party said that. They didn't even consult with me on who they chose. Mm-hmm. He was a bit miffed by that, and that's why he said, well, if Gary Moneypenny runs, he said, Gary Moneypenny's a Democrat, he was going to support him. Right. Just he and Alex, there's some bad blood here between the two on this. So there's no doubt.
Yeah, remember Drew Alexander was a Democrat before he became a Republican, and certainly.
So Drew has made his party upset. Now it sounds like Gary has made Gary Moneypenny, Ward 10 councilman-elect, has now made the Democrats upset because they thought he was going to run.
Although I talked to Wayne Jones, the Democratic Party chairman, on the filing deadline day, and he said, hey, look, he would have been a great candidate, but we still have two good, Democratic candidates here. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like he, completely left us in a lurch here. Yeah, but it is true that
people will recognize for one.
And Lieutenant Barry was with the department for quite a while, so they're both experienced men, experienced in law enforcement, so they have the credentials. I don't think that's the problem. They don't have the name recognition. Frank Martucci does because he handles some big cases for the Akron Police Department and was a good detective for many years. But, the thing is they don't have the name recognition that Gary Moneypenny has, obviously being in city council previously, then becoming chief deputy, now back to city council again. So,
well, without Moneypenny, this thing becomes a wide open race. Rivers, the Republican candidate, has, from I'm told, a great resume.
Yes, he does.
Carries himself as a captain up in I believe the Falls,
yes,
and hasn't supposedly an impeccable record. He hasn't been fully vetted, I don't think, at this point. But certainly Moneypenny stepping away from this is a huge victory for the Republicans. It gives them a chance. All three of these guys, I don't think, carry any name recognition. And someone pointed out, who knew of Drew Alexander before he became sheriff.
So Moneypenny decides to stay on Akron City Council, and so too does Jeff Fusco, whom most of us thought was serious about his campaign to run against Zach Milkovich for state representative. Now he decides he's going to stay on council.
Right. I talked to Jeff about this also on the filing deadline, and he said that he basically felt his number one priority was his family, and that he could do more good here. He would be the minority likely in Columbus. But I think that part of what was going on here, like with Gary Moneypenny, is that he was anticipating what could be a really nasty campaign as well, and he wasn't sure that he wanted to go through that.
I also, too, wonder if this is all just a lot of posturing prior to the filing deadline, and each side jockeying for position.
Kind of trial balloons.
Trial balloons, throwing their weight around a little bit, and flexing their muscles and saying, if you do this, I'm going to do this. And
there could be some gamesmanship, no doubt about it. And knowing the party chairman here, I could see that happening.
From both sides.
Right.
From both sides.
Right.
And I think they do it all the time. And, these guys are like football coaches. There's a lot of strategy that goes into play here, and a lot of maneuvering. And it's that same way with the probate court.
Which transitions to our next topic.
There you go.
Tom McKinney steps aside as state representative to be appointed to the open remainder of the term of Bill Spicer in probate court, and then doesn't file to keep the job.
It sounds like this was pre-planned, doesn't it? I mean, everybody thought, well, he's going to run, but as you said, Phil, in our other conversation, he sort of took one for the team, if you will. And this opens up for Allison McCarty, I understand, now to run, and that also protects her seat, her current judge's seat. So obviously, he knew going in that he was just going to take this for the short term. And then but he says he wants to implement some programs before he leaves. I saw that quote from him as well. So we'll see what he does in the short period of time he's in there.
Leave the tag on the robe.
Exactly.
Because it'll be pretty much still brand new by the end of this.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be a
term.
fascinating race between Eleanor Stormer and Allison McCarty for the probate court. This is a very...
Why do you say that?
Well, it's a very important position for the Republicans have held for many, many years. It's a court that they don't want to surrender, and they're not going to surrender without a fight. I think that the canons of judicial conduct here, it's a good thing that those things are in place, because this could really come down to a very big, nasty fight between Stormer and McCarty. There's no love lost there, clearly.
No, they've had some nasty ones before, so
right.
This is just another continuation.
The last big probate court judge race was very, very nasty.
Right, and Stormer came really close to defeating Bill Spicer, who's been there 30 years. She came very close, and she's taken on McCarty, who I think the Republicans consider their best candidate for the position. But then again, 5-6 years ago, Stormer beat McCarty, and it was a nasty campaign.
Explain to the viewers, why is that job so important?
There's just a lot of patronage that goes with it. There is a lot of jobs in the probate court. They handle marriage certificates. They do a lot of wills and estates and guardianships. There's a lot of appointments in terms of attorneys who handle guardian cases. There's a lot of money involved in there. There's also some boards that the probate judge appoints to. There's a lot more power in that position than perhaps any other judicial position in the county.
School levies, too. We're going to see a handful of them. The Akron Public Schools putting one on that's pretty similar to how much money it would raise. And they came within 200 votes, but we're going to see it again in March.
Yeah, we are. And I think that they are pretty confident because they didn't lose by that much, okay? That was a pretty close margin. I think what they feel they have to do is get more of their people out. And we spoke with Superintendent David James about this, and we asked him, well, what are you going to do different the next time that will help you maybe win compared to this one, even though it's a little higher levy? It's 5.9 mil this time versus 5.5 in November. What are you going to do? And he said, well, we just need to get more of our people to make sure they get out to vote. He felt as though if they'd gotten a few more of their folks out, that they would have swung the balance in their favor. He said we have to do a better job of making sure the people that really care about the school system get out there and that they cast ballots. He says we need to shore that up just a little bit. He's very confident.
Aren't they in a tough position because when you only lose by 200, it's hard to look at your campaign and know what it was.
Yeah.
If you lose by 5,000, then you go, we need a totally different strategy. Right. It's easier to start over. But when you lose by such a narrow margin, it could have been the weather. It could have been any number of things.
Well, he thinks that there were just some people who should have come out to vote who didn't. Now, this is another question. The voters are looking at this and they're saying, well, if we don't pass the levy, you have to cut $22 to $23 million. But even if we pass the levy, you're still going to cut $16 million. It's almost like a no-win situation here. It's just a matter of a few $1 million. But any of those cuts, whether the levy passes or fails, are going to be deep. They're going to hurt. So, what is a voter to do? I say, well, there's still going to be a lot of damage. Should I make the damage a little bit less, or what can I do? So it's really a unique situation that Akron's at.
Let's continue that right now as we move to NewsNite.net.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
Another key in the elections for 2012 is who will represent the Akron area in Congress, and two stalwarts, shall we say, or at least two sitting Congresspeople. Betty Sutton and Jim Renacci now are going to end up going head-to-head in a newly formed 16th district. This is very much, I think, what they envisioned down in Columbus, and that is consolidating another ward that was heavily Democratic.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think this district is very interesting in the way that has really morphed. It used to be most of Stark County. Now it's moved over. It's all of Wayne County. It's part of Medina, part of Summit, goes all the way up to Cuyahoga. And, I talked to Betty Sutton this week, and she said, look, they targeted me. We expected this to happen. That is what has happened. So you're really going to have, two incumbents who are pretty well known in this area that are going to be, going head to head. And I think it'll be a really good race.
Renee, this is his first term. Betty Sutton's seeking her fourth term. Will the voters pay attention to these two, or will it come down to name recognition?
I think they will, and I'll tell you something that's interesting about this new district is the number of rural areas which favor Republicans that have been included in this district, which helps Jim Renacci. So Betty Sutton doesn't have as much of the urban area as she used to have in her district anymore. It's a more widespread district in some of the rural counties, and I think that's going to make the race close. That's going to make it. I think Renacci has a shot because of that. That's exactly what the Republicans wanted. That's what they got.
Another interesting thing is that you have the possibility here. They've divided Summit into 3 different districts into 4 now, and the only possibility that Summit County could continue to have a representative from the county is if Betty Sutton wins. Otherwise, everyone else who's running for all of the different districts that touch down into Summit live outside of the county.
And what we should say is Steve LaTourette still owns a piece of it. Marcia Fudge from the Cleveland area now owns bits of West Akron, Bath, and Copley and some other areas out there. And, of course, you still have Tim Ryan's district that reaches across.
Looks like a jigsaw puzzle, yes.
Yeah. It is. And the Marcia Fudge district in particular, the fact that it stretches all the way up from, Cuyahoga and then just comes down barely and picks up, part of Akron is a very, very strangely shaped district.
It's like it hops on 77 and then comes south and gets off at Wheatley Road and then makes a curve through town.
And she's in for a good race. Marcia Fudge is not, she's not getting a free ride there. Nina Turner, the state senator, I believe, is running against her. That's sort of a surprise there. And also, too, we're trying to, Vernon Sykes, I don't know if you guys have heard the rumblings, but our friend Henry Gomez from the Plain Dealer tweeted weeks ago that Vernon Sykes is going to retire. I guess, I don't know if we tried it, he's not contacted us.
He's running again.
He is running. Okay,
yeah.
So he's changed his mind.
But he has a Democratic challenger, which many didn't think would happen because the party tried to protect that district, and
Vernon Sykes,
another Democrat wouldn't run.
From what I understand, was considering running for the Marcia Fudge congressional district and decided instead to run for re-election for the state house. So, but I had heard that there had been some, secret meetings between, some of the higher ups in Summit County about, should we try to get our own person, to run for this from the county. And ultimately, Vernon Sykes decided not to do it. And so when Marcia Fudge filed this week, you saw Russ Pry and Don Poswellic among the people who endorsed her for that race.
We have a few minutes left. I want to talk about a study that came out this week that shows the city of Akron behind Fort Wayne, Indiana, in job creation. And I think as tough as the economy has been, this surprises me that we rank that high as far as heading into good, as far as creating jobs.
Well, I think what happened is they factored in some of the more recent announcements of medical supply company moving into Akron. Some of the higher paying jobs. These are not jobs that are just standard pay or minimum wage or anything. These are good paying jobs. Research and development, that type of job. I think that's what they were looking at whenever they put this survey together. It might be a little bit misleading in the fact that those are the jobs that are available, but how many of them? We really don't have a handle. We have a projected number of jobs that are going to be created. I think a couple of hundred with the one company that's going to go on Union Street. But at the same time, I think that's what they base their figures on, is the fact that the new job development announced from these firms, that we're trying to develop the medical corridor here. These are smaller firms that are moving in now, medical supply firms. And I think that may have been a factor in when they put this job projection report together.
And we get credit, the city of Akron does, for retaining Bridgestone, Firestone, and Goodyear jobs.
That's also a factor.
Right, and I understand those might show up in the trends. Those aren't necessarily new jobs, but is that where we've come to, where cities in the Midwest the best they can do is fight to hang on to the jobs that they have.
I think that's an everyday battle.
Exactly.
You know, Ohio's fighting to take Sears from Illinois. Other states have.
Chiquita is moving
Chiquita's
out of North
leaving.
Carolina now. You know,
Yeah.
North
Exactly.
Carolina gave them a sweet deal. They're moving out of Cincinnati, so it's a constant battle between the states, and Ohio is trying to get put their nose in there.
And within cities too. Look at the battle for American Greetings up in Cuyahoga County. So yeah, it's a constant struggle. And it's a company that has the advantage here because they have the leverage in this economy, and certainly they're getting all sorts of incentives and tax breaks in order to stay. And that's the name of the game nowadays. That's the world we live in.
Well, Governor Kasich had a meeting with, some 30 companies, and he was being criticized for meeting with these companies that were looking for breaks and incentives to either grow here or remain in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And he was also trying to entice some companies in from out of state. So Ohio has to get involved in this battle or they're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned the incentives, and the criticism always there is how much are you really willing to give away to keep jobs, but it's that vicious circle, because if you don't give them incentives, you could lose them.
Exactly.
Right.
And see where they go. I think about the incubator here in Akron and how it's had this track record of success of some of these small businesses, but are there going to be enough for jobs? I just worry people will see that headline and say, okay, I'm moving to Akron, and then get here and not necessarily see a lot of help wanted signs out somewhere.
Yeah, I think people are going to have a job. Hopefully, they have a job before they come here. They've done the best they can. We're seeing some development here, and again, in light of the auditor's report too, you can see that some of this job creation that the city's done has come with some sort of cost, and that's something that's going to be determined down the road to see whether actually this is really worth the investment that we've
In
made.
this economy, any headline that's good news
Exactly.
about jobs is good news for any city, and that's for sure. Larry, Stephanie, Phil, thank you so much for being with us this week. We hope you have a great week. Remember, you can watch this entire broadcast again and see our extended edition of our interviews, as well as read our blog over at newsnight.net. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next Friday right here for Newsnight. Good night.